let's see here. Haven't done a Bloodborne video in a while. I don't even think the last one I did got that many views. I mean, I guess if people are actually wanting Bloodborne stuff, then, you know, maybe. That game's like 4.5 years old, man. I just don't think there's a market for it. Ooh, holy nutballs, you guys ate that up. All right, guess I'm doing more of these. Goddamn. Bloodborne boss rankings. Chalice Dungeon Edition. It's kind of like the limited edition, you know, only it's the exact same thing. I don't really know why I introduced the video like that. It's more bosses, okay? It's the exact same as every other video on YouTube about this topic. It's 2 in the morning, animals from all across the neighborhood won't stop making noises, and it sounds like my upstairs neighbors are busy putting in a bowling alley, so I might as well make use of my time and start ranking some bosses. Oh, and by the way, the bosses in this list aren't being ordered in terms of difficulty or anything, but just how enjoyable the fights are in and of themselves. All right, I think that's about it. Let's do the thing. Considering I've been playing this game on and off for over 4.5 years, yes, that's how long it's been out, and yes, you really are that old, I really do have no right putting the game on blast like I'm about to, but would it have been that hard to read a Lovecraft novel for a couple more hours and just pencil in some actual bosses instead of just using regular ass enemies and giving them a giant health bar? The Maneater Boar is the least exciting boss on this list because it feels the dire need to preface its name with the title of Maneater. Like, given its size, I could have assumed that anyway, but you just wanted to spell it out as though it's a flex that a boar the size of a double-decker bus could actually eat a regular-sized human. Like, yeah, I'd kinda be a little concerned if it couldn't, but this thing just wants to let you know, yeah, I can eat you, if I wanted. I just, I don't know. I just don't want to right now. You caught me on an off day, all right? Leave me alone. Given the fact that it's a boar, it probably bathes in its own excrement, but it would seem a tad less impressive going by the name of Shit-Eater Boar, wouldn't it? Unfortunately, however, that might actually be a more fitting title for the fat bastard. Because that's probably the most important thing you need to know about it. Man, this guy is a real bore. Am I right? You know what? I'm probably not even gonna leave that in. Or I might. I don't know, let's see what happens. See what kind of mood I'm in by the end of this video. Brainsucker. Again, why? What's with all these weird flex titles? Like, yeah, I can tell by your face that you probably have the ability to suck my brain out from my skull. Like, it's not like a skill, you can't put that shit on your resume or anything. The Brainsucker has been given a boss health bar despite being a common enemy that you can just find one morning walking the street on your way to work. I already put this thing on one Bloodborne list here, and the last thing I was expecting was for it to meander its way into another. And a list about fucking bosses, no less. Like, what the hell? I don't even know what to say about this one, other than the fact that it just doesn't belong here. These bosses only appear in Chalice dungeons, so by the time you even get here, you've already faced enough of these octopus-looking shitheads that killing one pretty much becomes synonymous with the effort it takes to wipe your ass. You've been sucking brains for your whole life, man, so why are you acting so goddamn stupid? The trio of Merciless Watchers are the textbook diagram of a Thanksgiving Day party gone wrong. And none of these oafs are company that you would ever want to have joining your tables any damn way. You've got Pumpkin Pie in the corner trying to put a couple blunderbuss rounds into your face, but you can't deal with them just yet because you've also got Turkey and Stuffing over here mashing your face in with a tire iron. This boss fight is about as exciting as being full after a Thanksgiving dinner. Not even the actual eating part of the meal that everyone actually enjoys, only the aftermath of it. Like, you just walk into this boss's room and immediately you just feel bloated and you hate yourself for the next few minutes and you regret every decision that led to where you currently are in life. They each go down in like 3 hits apiece if your weapon is upgraded enough, and the fight only gets that much easier the less of them there are bothering you. So again, it's not like there's really even that much to say about these bosses except just drafting up jokes about how fat they are. God damn, is this what the Abyss Watchers looked like before Dark Souls 3? Holy shit, the transformation is amazing. What's your diet plan, bro? Damn. Oh, hey, look at that. Another normal-ass enemy posing as a normal-ass boss, which means another normal-ass paragraph that my normal ass has to write. It's just a Silverbeast with a giant health bar. It's all he is. And that's going to continue to be a recurring theme in this list, and that's not even my fault. Outside of having a name that sounds like he would pass as the antagonist of a Dr. Seuss book, the Loran Silverbeast is about as special and unique as the many bricks you find coating the walls. You find the Silverbeast out there guarding tombs, chests and other valuables, but I guess whoever made these things and put them in the game just thought they were way too important to not be copied and pasted into every single facet of the Chalice dungeon combat. Because I swear to God, these things are fucking everywhere. Like, why is this a thing? He's just a normal dude with a sideways mouth and a torch. The most impressive thing about him is the fact that he breathes fire. Like, cool. So can 90% of the other enemies in this game. The beast's possessed soul is a massive euphemism for what this thing really is, which is Satan. He's just like, look at him. He's just Satan. All right, he's Satan. Remember that one time you actually encountered one of these things in the story mode of the game if you went through the healing church after killing BSB? Well, the game just goes on ahead and assumes you don't remember that encounter by just straight up making his ass a Chalice boss. And one of the easier Chalice bosses, no less, because not only do you encounter him in some of the earlier dungeons, but his moveset as a boss just really isn't that interesting. His main means of attack is just this weird drunken monkey melee attack that only ends whenever the hell he feels like ending it. And he breathes, oh, look at that, he breathes fire. Oh, what a unique talent. And when you get him down to low HP, he breathes even more of it. Wow, this is such an exciting boss. This is such an exciting list, guys. Just, holy shit. Finally, an actual boss to talk about. The first official boss on this list, and it still doesn't even count as completely new. Rom, the incompetent landmass, if you're familiar with his channel's previous ranking, is not a boss I like fighting. It's like not even slightly, if I'm being honest. Like, under certain circumstances, I'd rather just be fighting one of the other dudes I've already mentioned, because at least I know that's a fight that's gonna be over quick. Rom, the indisputable queen of cancer, likes prolonging fights by ethereally teleporting into corners of the arena when things don't go her way, and she thinks the best solution to any problem is to just throw more spiders at it. It's no secret that Rom is one of my least favorite bosses of all time, but it has technically met more criteria for being on this list than anyone else I've even brought up so far, and that I cannot deny. At the very least, we are finally past the normal enemies and we are getting into boss territory. God damn it. God damn it. Well, never mind. Next up on Rusty's list is the Keeper of the Old Lords. And I'm not sure how old these lords are exactly, but if they're half as old as that fashion statement of a hat you're wearing, then we might be in trouble. Jesus Christ, what century is that thing even from? Wait, it breathes fire too! Holy shit! It's really sort of disappointing how easy this fight is without his devil dogs coming in to back him up. Just kind of goes to show who's really carrying who there. I've got better things to do than wage a sword fight with a walking Halloween decoration, so let's just try and wrap this up quickly if you don't mind. I can probably find this exact same costume for $14 at a thrift store, so don't act like you're any cooler than you are just because you can breathe fire from your mouth. Because apparently that's just the cool thing to do in Bloodborne. It's not even a unique thing, it doesn't even matter. The Celestial Emissary is as challengeless, boring, and just as big-headed as his story mode cousin-in-law. And I would argue that even that fight offers more entertainment because at least it starts you off just swatting at a bunch of brainless, slap-fighting extraterrestrials from the faraway galaxy of Gives a Shit 7. The Chalice dungeon variant, on the other hand, just starts you out at the would-be second phase, which is a pretty balls move considering that it actually takes away what little entertainment the original fight had, in my opinion. The last thing you would have expected was for one of these party balloons to hyperinflate to 10 times normal size in the second phase, but the Chalice dungeons don't even give you that. You just walk in and bam, there he is, ready to bear hug you until your spine breaks in half. The story variant is already enough of a bore even with all the additional mobs, but somehow the Chalice dungeon variant found a way to make it even less interesting. The Forgotten Madman is basically just a glorified hunter NPC fight that can summon another hunter friend that's equally as hopeless as he is to help him out in battle. The Forgotten Madman is probably the most appropriately named boss in this entire list because he's so unbelievably shit at fighting that it's no wonder he didn't make it into anyone's history textbook. Don't let that holy blade intimidate you any because he's a complete casual when it comes to actually using it. Every time he shifts his weapon to greatsword, he basically just offers you a galactic-sized parry window that you might actually have to try to even miss. Pretty much every time you see him shift his weapon, just shoot him in the face during his sheath animation, and bam, there you go, Visceral City. The only two attacks he has that pose even somewhat of a threat are his arcane spells, the Augur of Bullshit and the Cancer Beyond, but if you're good at dodging around those, then there's really nothing to say about this fight, like, at all. Professor Cheekflaps makes a much anticipated return here in Ailing Loran. Simply and bluntly put, if you've seen one BSB, then you've seen just about all of them. Does this one technically count as a regular enemy though? Because the vanilla BSB was technically a boss, but he was downgraded to regular enemy status during the Old Hunters DLC, and you could just, you know, find him, like, in a random cave somewhere with a bunch of other baddies, so I don't know, I'm not sure. Regardless, the blood-starved beast is a beast that's starved for blood. If that sentence felt underwhelming to listen to me say, well then congratulations, you now know what it's like to fight the Ailing Loran BSB, which is, it's exactly the same fight as the one in the story. He flaps his flappy cheeks and then flaps them harder the lower his health is. Repeat until death. I don't care how much you drag your 10 feet of cheek flesh behind you like a badly made wedding dress. It's not impressing me any more than it did the first time I saw it. Are we finally done with the normal dudes? Holy shit, I can actually go on record saying this. We are done. This is a boss. This is an actual boss from the Chalice dungeons and nowhere else. Holy shitting hell, it's about time. This is an actual boss and it only took us like 8 fucking minutes to get here. Oh my god. The Undead Giant has some bite to him. I wish I could get a closer look at this boss, but it seems like doing combat anywhere near him that isn't directly below his asshole is a suicide mission because of all the AoE attacks he's packing. You have the opportunity to face 3 different variants, either a dual blade giant, a cannon giant, or a club wielding giant with a bunch of little ball and chains attached to his back that swing around his body in an extremely annoying fashion, mind you, every time he attacks. And they all do appear as normal enemies later on, but they do make their first appearance as bosses in the dungeons way before that even happens. So I would technically count this as a full-fledged boss fight. He looks badass. He's a 15-foot tall walloper with weapons sewn onto his hands, but unfortunately how he looks isn't really that contingent to how he fights. He's weak to just about every type of elemental damage in the book, so pretty much anything you have in your inventory will do at least some damage to him, and this also means a fully upgraded boom hammer can trivialize this fight to a pretty hilarious degree. He does this really predictable spin attack when you're behind him, and if you can dodge through that, then this fight can be pretty much over in 30 seconds. If he's a harder hitting variant and his attacks do considerably more damage, then the winning strategy is to just stay at a distance and throw poison knives at him until he collapses and gives up. I mean, yeah, it is technically the first original boss of this list, but neither strategy to deal with him is really that fun, if I'm being honest. Despite being a pretty engaging fight, the stakes don't really feel nearly as high as I'd expect a technical final boss to have. Yharnam the Pthumerian Queen is the last boss of the lowest level Pthumeru Chalice dungeon, and although there are some pretty cool attacks that she has that are good at catching you by surprise, all this really reminds me of is a more enhanced and glorified version of all the apparitions in Canehurst. In fact, you know what? Yeah, the more I look back at my own footage, I'm pretty sure that's exactly where they lifted her dagger moveset from. The Pthumerian Queen isn't really the queen of anything, except waiting around for 30 seconds before casting an AoE that's so ridiculously easy to get out of that I actually tried to get hit by it in this footage just to see what it would do, and it still didn't do anything. I missed it somehow. I've seen clips of people getting lifted up in the air and shit during this fight, but it seems whatever that attack is, it's so easy to outmaneuver and just outright avoid that it isn't even worth how cool it looks when it happens. A good melee build with Ludwig's holy shit blade seems to take her out in around a minute flat if you're aggressive enough. People also recommend you bring a buttload of antidotes with you because most of her attacks are rapid poison, but I still don't think I ended up getting poisoned once during the fight. I don't know, I mean, the clones that she summons can still make it a pretty engaging fight, but it's not really what one expects from a final boss, so to speak. The Pthumerian Descendant. This guy is just fucking cool. A lot of his combo attacks are insanely difficult to keep up with, which makes him an even larger threat in deeper level dungeons. But the Pthumerian Descendant is where the Chalice dungeons actually begin to feel fresh and new in a really threatening, Bloodborne-ish type of way. He rips and tears at your hunter at blinding speeds, but the main drawback to his attacks being so fast is that you can kinda just fire your weapon at complete random and still have a strong enough chance to stagger him. Stunlock is king if you're packing a melee build, and he also seems weak to arcane damage, so if you're a fan of the Moonlight Greatsword, then, well, now is your time to shine. But as many times as I've replayed Chalice dungeons and beaten this boss, nothing really beats the tried and true get behind him and shove an axe up his ass meta that's pretty much ruled the game since 2016 and has never stopped. Still a pretty fun fight though. Part of what I think makes the amygdala cool in Chalice dungeons, and yes, that is how you correctly pronounce that, by the way, is that you only ever fight one in the story in a completely outdoors arena, so it doesn't really hit you how big this damn thing is until you've just ran into it in like a hallway or something. This thing is fucking huge, and it has all the same nasty attacks that his story version had in the Nightmare Frontier, which means it's still wise to use high DPS weapons when he lowers his head, because one hit sometimes is all you're gonna get. He shares many attributes with bosses like the Undead Giant insofar as he's weak to literally anything that burns, shocks, or just plain feels bad, and if you have the stats for it, you can probably just stagger this dude by just throwing a Molotov in his face. This guy probably staggers to the sound of someone coughing too loudly, so long as it's close enough to his soft, saggy head. But this being a repeat boss, and additionally the same strategies also working just as well, don't really stop this boss from being at least somewhat entertaining to fight, especially during the final phase where he gets so pissed that he just rips his arms off and starts beating you to death with his own detached limbs. Like, that's the amount of salty that I aspire to be, you know? Like, that is just another whole level of done with your shit. Next up is the Pthumerian Elder. Now, this fight is just cool. It's not necessarily hard. I actually think the Descendant fight shits all over the Elder in terms of difficulty, but there's something mesmerizing about watching all the different fire spells the Elder casts on you, watching his staff morph into a giant crossbow that shoots arrows, or helicoptering his staff around and just summoning a giant fire tornado. Everything in his kit of moves is just fire, and I mean that both literally and by the dad joke of it. Whatever. He's a largely passive boss, which means plenty of time to react to his attacks, and most of them, save the obvious crossbow spell, don't even hit you if you're far enough out of range, which kind of defeats the purpose of, you know, being a spellcaster, doesn't it? Hey, it's whatever. You do you, boo. My personal favorite thing to do is just grab the boom hammer and the flame sprayer when fighting this boss, and it may not be the proper strategy for it, but it sure does feel cool having an Agni Kai the Last Airbender style with a dude in a cloak that's like 2,000 years older than you. Pretty good fight. Alright boys, here we go, and so we enter Rusty's top 5. Watchdog of the Old Lords might be one of my favorite exclusively Chalice dungeon bosses. He's easy enough to be a solid introduction boss to the dungeons while still retaining a lot of his difficulty on deeper levels. His quicker charge attacks are just fast enough to look cool, but you can still reliably avoid them with decent timing. Needless to say, he's pretty strong against fire, but he also has pretty decent resistances to other elemental damage as well. But that's not saying there aren't more than a couple strategies hunters have shared around to effectively deal with Fido here, and the general consensus is just about every decently upgraded weapon is pretty solidly effective. Some of his stronger charge attacks can one-shot you, especially if the dungeon you're in is cursed, so it does kind of encourage you to be really careful and take some time to read exactly what he's doing before going aggressive. It really is just a matter of knowing when to dodge, and once you get a grasp on his heavily telegraphed attacks, he basically just becomes an easier version of the next boss that's on this list. The Aberrant Beast was an optional boss in the story mode portion of Bloodborne, but it's not exactly hard at all for anyone to slip by it if they don't know it's there, which can lead to a pretty entertaining surprise when your friend stumbles into the second lower Loran chamber and ends up getting his face used as toilet paper for a giant electric werewolf. This boss is about as cinematic as it gets. Lots of fanfare and lots of really cool moments in this fight to lose your mind and your health over. Each phase significantly heightens the stakes in comparison to the last, and not only only do his later phases come with added melee combos, but even his base attacks sort of get a makeover the more he powers up. It's a really dynamic fight with lots of different attacks you have to pay attention to. He has claw swipes, jump attacks, evasive maneuvers, just about the whole 9 yards. It's a pretty exhausting fight if I'm being honest. If you want to see what fighting this boss is like, super glue fur to your face and start doing jumping jacks for 5 minutes. The level of exhaustion you feel afterwards is, it's gonna be pretty similar. Ebrietas, Daughter of the Cosmos, is solid in-game proof that whoever the Cosmos is, he was probably a pretty shitty father. This thing is just pissed. It's pissed, it has tentacles, and it was my second favorite boss in Bloodborne's natural story progression. It was the boss that took me 10 minutes to even find, because apparently, by some stroke of massive intellect, the window you break to find the boss is actually a reference to a Lovecraftian story. Yes, yeah, the window itself, the act of breaking the window to get to the boss is a reference to a story that's like 150 years old. So as cryptic as it is, you can't even get mad at how well this thing is hidden. Luckily, if you're running through the Chalice dungeons, you'll be able to challenge Ebrietas in a more direct way. Ebrietas is the final boss of the first Chalice dungeon, and if you don't think swinging your sword at undercooked calamari sounds exciting, then, well, I implore you to seek this dungeon out for yourself with your best thrusting weapon. And no, that wasn't a dick joke. Like, she's literally weak to thrusting type weapons because she's like made of goo and stuff. Like, I don't know the physics behind it, but what I'm saying is you can finally put that dex build hunter to good use and use a goddamn spear. Fire aligned weapons like the boom hammer aren't really a bad choice either, but so long as you're able to stay in between those two leg flaps hugging her ass, you can pretty much use any weapon you want and still take home the V. Just watch out for space lasers, because this motherfucker shoots space lasers. Yep, not kidding. Yep, see? Yep, there they are. Look at that. Next up is the Bloodletting Beast, specifically the headless variant. At first it really only feels like a sloppier, more hastily put together version of the Dark Beast, but that quickly changes as the boss goes through its phases. The base Bloodletting Beast I would put somewhere around Aberrant Beast tier, twice the size but without all the sparky boom effects, so I'd say in terms of sheer entertainment and enjoyment of the fight, I'd just call it a wash. The headless variant, on the other hand, just has an entirely new spectrum of attacks and abilities he can use, all through the act of channeling energy through his non-headedness. I don't even know how the fuck this works. This is the human equivalent of someone that wrecked his bike and belt sanded his face on the pavement for 12 miles and somehow, God willing, just got up and walked it off. He leaks blood darts out of the giant gash in his body that inflict rapid poison, in addition to just beating the Lovecraftian shit out of you as expected with one of his 17 different melees. And the second phase just... oh my god, this second phase. Jesus deep fried Christ with a side of ranch dressing. If you thought this fight wasn't worth it before, the second phase just makes it into a whole new charade. Would you be this furious if you had an Alaskan bullworm protruding forth from the cavity where your head used to be? I don't know, I'd be pretty pissed. The only downside is that, to my knowledge, this second phase is really mostly just a cosmetic change. There's a new thing or two that his decked out worm head can do, and he does get slightly more aggressive, but just about all of his base attacks and claw swipes and whatnot remain pretty much the same. Taking my undisputed first place position as all-time favorite Chalice dungeon boss is the Loran Dark Beast. This whole fight is just insanely over the top. He has no means of moderating himself whatsoever. He shows no hesitation in dive bombing on your ass the second you travel through that door with a show-stopping jump attack that, in deeper level dungeons, can sometimes just one-shot you immediately. Holy fuck. Shit my pants. Talk about a warm welcome. Could you give me a chance to just unsheath my sword for fuck's sake? It's like having people ask you questions as soon as you get out of bed. Like, give me a goddamn minute to wake up. Can I at least have my coffee first? Shit. And good luck locking onto this thing, because he will take that camera of yours and bend it backwards, frontwards, and up your ass until you start swinging your sword at the empty space in the exact opposite direction you want to. At least you taught those air particles a lesson, son. Yeah, that'll learn them. This guy has enough health and resistances to qualify for a raid boss, and I have a feeling that isn't too far off from what they were shooting for, because you can just run around in this area just accumulating summons with the hunter bell, and then just show up to this fucker's doorstep with an army of hammer-wielding bodybuilders. You're just a pile of bones that stuck its tongue in a light socket. I'm surprised this thing doesn't go down with one swing. There are no heroes when it comes to the Dark Beast in Loran. He's the size of a T-Rex with all the speed and energy of a goddamn chihuahua, so whatever measures you have available, I suggest you take them. While it's definitely one of the longer fights, not a single moment of it is ever really boring, in my opinion, because there's just so much to pay attention to at any given time. His later phases involve the same attacks, only with smaller electric currents bursting from his claws with a range that's honestly just, it's criminal. It's stupid. And don't worry about being conservative with your blood vial consumption, because at full charge, anything from a bitch slap to a sneeze from this monster can pretty much just one-shot you anyways. So as far as I know, its only real weakness is arcane damage, so just whip out that Moonlight Sword and get good, as the kids say. Alright, so there you have it. Rusty's limited Chalice Dungeon Edition video of bosses listed, ranked, and all accounted for. Don't forget to check out all this cool Rusty merch at our store that totally doesn't exist yet, but it's the thought that counts, right? I don't give a shit. No one would buy my shirts anyways. I mean, right? Thanks for tuning into The Forge. I'm Rusty. Have a nice goddamn day, and don't forget to eat your vegetables. I'll see you next time. Peace.